Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today, INRIX and the UMD CATT Lab's PM3 analysis tools and enhanced NPMRDS datasets overview. And just want to wish everybody a happy Valentine's Day. We have two subject matter experts presenting today. From INRIX, we have Rick Schumann, our Vice President of Public Sector Strategy and Partnering. From the University of Maryland, Michael Pack joins us, Director of the university's Center for Advanced Transportation Technology Lab, also known as the CATT Lab. But before we get started, I'd like to just quickly review a few housekeeping items. Everyone is muted and will be throughout the webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation, please go ahead and submit them through the GoToWebinar questions window, and we will answer all the questions at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive an email from the GoToWebinar system within 24 hours with a link to the recording, and then the recording will also be published on INRIX's resource library on our website. Without further ado, I'd like to turn the webinar over to Rick Schumann, who will give an overview and kick us off today. Thanks so much.
Okay, Allie, sound check. Can you hear me fine?
Yep, can hear you just fine.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you everybody for attending. We have an hour and a half scheduled. These slides, we have about 60 slides. Should take an hour or less, and then we'll have Q&A again through the chat box. So the topics here, we're going to start with the purpose to give a little bit of a landscape with regard to NPMRDS and the 21 performance measure rule number 3, and then lead into a deep discussion on these tools and data set options that are available for licensing in the various forms. Key part of the rationale for the webinar is about a month ago, we collectively, UMD and the CATT Lab and INRIX have had a long partnership where they're offering a combination of tools and data to the industry almost a decade now. Earlier this year, about a month ago, we released a set of product services, if you will, into the marketplace to enhance the core NPMRDS data set we'll describe here in a little bit. And there's all sorts of interest and understandably some confusion around what options are available, which mechanism for agencies to utilize to support their PM3 reporting requirements. And so what we wanted to do here today was kind of cut through some of that clutter, explain the services that are available, explain them within the context of the FHWA supported NPMRDS program, the rulemaking, and the AASHTO pooled fund study, and then allow plenty of time for Q&A as well. And as we say here, one obvious disclaimer, while we work for these organizations as contractor suppliers, we don't speak for the Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, or AASHTO. And so if you have specific questions, we have contact information for AASHTO, and Rich Taylor and Wenjing Pu at Federal Highway Administration are the point people for our NPMRDS related issues with the federal government. Okay, so first let's talk about NPMRDS. It's an acronym that's been around for, I don't know, I think 2013, 2014 was the original program. It stands for the National Performance Management Research Dataset. It is a project that is funded, sponsored by the Federal Highway Administration, and it acquires an archived data set. Version 2 of the contract kicked off in early 2017, and that data is available for free to state DOTs and MPOs with a valid data sharing agreement. Both in version 1, it says a little later on here on the slides, version 1 was the first phase from 2014 contract periods, like 2014 through early 2017, and version 2 was kicked in February 2017, and with University of Maryland as the prime, contractor. INRIX is a subcontractor and a data provider as part of the team. We supply the data set. So the NPMRDS data set is an archive, speed and travel time data in 5-minute increments. There are 3 different types of data being provided. One is truck-only data, one is passenger data, and one is a combination of those. And there are all sorts of webinars that are available and recordings and such through Federal Highway Administration that documents NPMRDS in much more detail. There's a link here at the bottom to the help section of the current NPMRDS data downloader site, or access site, if you will. These data sets, essentially, they cover, you see the map on the right, that covers the national highway system and 26 key border crossings between the US, Canada, and Mexico. The data comes and is available in monthly increments. And again, it's been available from February. The data is available from February 1st, 2017. And it's anticipated a 5-year contract, if it runs the term, will continue to supply data through January 31st, 2022. So that's NPMRDS. Again, that's the data set. It's the core data is, I'll say, put in quotes, freely available. It's funded by the Federal Highway Administration, and it's available as data. One of the reasons that this data set is available and is being made available is it is a key data set to be used in the calculation of what's known as the PM3 performance measures rule, which essentially covers system performance, freight performance, and CMAQ performance related to congestion and the like. The rule itself, those of you that are deeply involved know it's taken quite a while to get to the final rule. The final rule was actually published in May 2017. It establishes 6 measures. All states and MPOs are responsible, or states are responsible for reporting, and MPOs have some responsibilities as well regarding travel time reliability on both the interstate and non-interstate, and then truck travel time reliability across the interstates. And for those that are areas over 1 million people this cycle that are in some form of CMAQ non-attainment or maintenance, there's an additional set of measures, 3 additional ones that have to be calculated, tracked, and so forth. NPMRDS data, what just described, is required, or an equivalent data set is required to be used for 4 of the 6 of these, including all 3 reliability measures. And on the right-hand side, won't go in great detail. Those of you, again, that are leading your PM3 implementation at a state or an MPO, you know these dates pretty well because they're coming up soon this year. But essentially, the initial target setting and the initial reporting on 2017 data is required this year, with the initial target setting dates occurring here in May of this year, May 20th of this year. And again, here's links to the rule and more details specific to the PM3. Again, we're not the implementers of the rule or the ones to interpret the rule for you at this stage. That's the federal government's and FHWA's responsibility. However, just last week, Federal Highway published their initial guidance on PM3 implementation, and HPMS is obviously is the system by which the reporting is going to be done. And so this report with this link here provides you kind of the actual the detailed information about the information that needs to be reported by segment. There's 40 different parameters to be reported for each road segment annually. And there's going to be further guidance coming out in a handful of areas. And I just listed a few that have been identified, actually how you calculate these metrics, how you estimate volumes for person hour of delay and occupancy factors for person hour delay, excessive delay, etc. And I think the important point here in the context of this webinar is that whatever analytics tools are used to translate NPMRDS data into the results that are going to be reported back to the feds is going to have to stay abreast of all this guidance to ensure that what is reported actually is proper, adheres to the guidelines, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of moving targets. And importantly for us, what we'll discuss is the University of Maryland team is obviously all over this, getting the guidance and ensuring that all the tools that are provided meet, create the data. The easy button that we'll discuss is actually the easy button, and it meets and adheres to the guidelines and criteria that the Fed set out. So last part related to NPMRDS and PM3 and the overview is as far as getting your NPMRDS data, this is what any state or MPO, any individual in the state or MPO that has a signed data sharing agreement would see in the freeware version, if you will, of NPMRDS. It's simply a data downloader, a coverage map, and then a link to how-to guides and the like. And again, the core data set's available at no cost. It's important, though, that the data is just the data. There's still to meet and to provide the information back to Federal Highway Administration, there has to be some sort of analysis tools that are utilized that access that data, create the metrics, deal with the segmentation, roll up to 15 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. And so every state, every MPO should be, if they're not already, should be asking themselves how are they going to, what tools are they going to use? And kind of a simple way of categorizing them is you can use or build your own, or you can license somebody's off-the-shelf products. And we've got a set of off-the-shelf products that we'll describe here today to do just that. So that leads us into what we're going to describe in much more depth today, which are the tools and the enhanced data sets that are available through the partnership of INRIX and UMD. And there's a lot of different ways to get access to those. And we're going to try to cut through some of the clutter related to that too. So we're going to describe kind of what the tools are and how you can go about acquiring them. And so we're going to start on a high level first. We're going to hit we're going to tell you what we're going to tell you, then we're going to tell you, then we're going to tell you what we told you, that whole presentation 101 thing. And so with regards to the options for how you can acquire these tools and the data, it really starts with the first question is, who's your agency and what agreements do you already have in place? There are, Michael knows the exact number, but it's probably around a dozen states in the country that are what you could call full-blown RIDIS customers. Michael will describe RIDIS in more detail later in the presentation. But this is a full set of tools designed to ingest, aggregate information, provide both real-time and historical tools. It's a long list of tools. But several states are already RIDIS customers, if you will, full stop. And in that case, if you're one of those states, and you should know who you are, if you've got full-blown access to RIDIS, all the tools we're talking about here are already available to you under whatever agreement gets you access to RIDIS. The additional data options that we'll talk about as far as backfill and expansion of the NPMRDS data are not part of that, but could be added as part of your contract mechanism. So if you're one of those states, you've already got the tools, and for you, it's a question of, is there additional value in these extended NPMRDS data sets. If you're not an existing RIDIS customer, then you kind of have a couple options. All states and MPOs have the opportunity to join the AASHTO pooled fund study. AASHTO has been outreaching, and Michael will describe this in more depth here, starting in a couple of slides, what the pooled fund is, how it's organized and structured. But every state and MPO has the chance to join the pooled fund study. And if you haven't heard about this, again, listen up closely to what Michael says, and then we will circle back with that. There's some opportunities there, but it also requires a 5-year commitment. And we also, through INRIX, we'll show you a set of options if you're either unable, for whatever reason, unable to join the pooled fund study. We have created a set of options that you can come to INRIX to get a combination of data and services. In some cases, very analogous to the pooled fund study, and in one case, extend far beyond that. And then if you're a coalition, I-95 Corridor Coalition member, so those are the states from Maine to Florida, there are some of you who are RIDIS customers and some of you who are not. And there's essentially an additional option to go through the coalition to gain access to data and or tools. And so again, if you're an existing RIDIS customer, this is focused on, do I want enhanced data? If you're not an existing RIDIS customer, then you kind of have the options of the pool fund or coming direct to INRIX. And if you're a coalition member, you have an additional option to go through the university, the coalition directly. And again, we'll come back to that in a bit. The building blocks as we get started. So we have this free data we talked about, but you need tools to make use of the free data. And Michael will describe essentially 3 layers of tools. The first 2 are available via the pooled fund study, and that's the MAP21 PM3 analytics tools. Then there's a set of additional tools that folks that have been leveraging the Probe Data Analytics Suite, INRIX performance measures, that you know about these tools. We've titled them in the context today, Deep Dive Analytics. Michael will talk about those. And then for one of the INRIX premium option, the full-blown RIDIS license and use, and Michael will talk about that as well. It adds a series of robust tools. So if on the tool side, we're offering in different ways. You get the tools to allow you to meet the PM3 requirements, tools to do much more, and then RIDIS tools, which go way above and beyond the probe analytics, probe data analytics, if you will. And then on the data side, again, the core data set is essentially, it's free with 2 states and MPOs with a data sharing agreement. There are kind of 3 data options that fall on the enhanced data side. First up is backfill. This is where we make, again, the version 2 of the NPMRDS core data set starts February 1, 2017. And the backfill option brings that data, creates consistent data from January 1, 2016, the same roads that are covered in 2017, same format. It's consistent data, and what that does is it allows, it provides 2+ years, 2 years of data and growing for agencies, and it'd be helpful in target setting, particularly off the interstates, where the difference in how version 1 and version 2 are calculated is very extreme as far as being able to leverage that data for target setting. The next option in data is what we call expansion, and I'll show you this visually later. But expanded essentially includes the backfill and then provides the full TMC network. So again, NPMRDS is on the National Highway System. The full TMC network is about twice that size. And again, it provides a consistent format from 2016 forward using the same processing methodology that we use for NPMRDS. And this is a good companion for anybody that's looking for deep dive analytics. This is a logical thing to do. It essentially increases the network that you're able to use those tools on. And then lastly, as we call INRIX traditional archive. This is our real-time data archive that we've been doing for years. And we'll come back to this, but in our premium service offering, we add the 1-minute archive from 2015 forward across the entire TMC network. So these are building blocks, again, and we've kind of pieced together options to kind of step through how to leverage, you start with free data. If you want to just do PM3, you have some options. If you want to go deeper, we've got options, so on and so forth. So that's kind of as an overview. I'm going to hand it over to Michael to talk about the pooled fund study and how it's structured, what options are available through the pooled fund study, contacts, and so I have Matt Hardy's contact information we put here. He is driving this on the AASHTO staff for this particular pooled fund. So, Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, let's go on to the next slide, I suppose. This is task 4 of a Transportation Performance Management Pooled Fund Study, and all of what we're about to show you is available through that pooled fund study, at least through the next few slides. It's available through AASHTO, and there is a 5-year commitment. Sorry, next slide there, Rick.
All right.
And one more. There we go. So through part of a competitive procurement with AASHTO, the CATT Lab, INRIX, and Texas A&M Transportation Institute were awarded the ability to offer these tools and services to you. Next slide, please. And essentially, we're able to offer a couple things. The first is tools and technical support. So for agencies who want access to our MAP 21 reporting tools, and then also additional deep dive analytics that go beyond the MAP 21 tools, but help you understand why your roads are performing the way they are. And then there's that additional INRIX NPMRDS version 2.0 data that you can purchase as well that Rick just mentioned. Next slide. So for those who join the pooled fund study, you get immediate access to our PM3 MAP 21 tools. And so that gives you the ability to compute, visualize, and download all of the MAP 21 PM3 metrics and submetric data as required to be reported by Federal Highway. Also, one of those PM3 reports requires speed limit data, posted speed limit data to be integrated. So as part of the pooled fund study, we will take your agency's speed limit data and integrate it into our tools. We also have some trendline capabilities that help you understand in what direction your agency's performance is currently trending. And then we are currently working on this easy button functionality. It's going to make it easy for your agencies to click a button or two, and it's going to create all of the necessary files and deliverables that you need to submit up to Federal Highway Administration. Then we also provide full technical support, and it's going to include training webinars, web-based FAQs, and how-to videos, and then even one-on-one agency support. So if you've got questions, you can write to us, you can call us, and we will help you out. And the coolest thing, I think, is there's no restriction on the number of users from each agency. So if a state buys into these tools, then everyone in the state gets access to them, including the MPOs, including researchers, including consultants, so long as they've signed the data sharing agreement that goes along with this. Next slide, please. So the tools themselves are pretty easy to use. There's a drop-down list that has all of the states and the MPAs listed. You click on one, you select your particular MPA or your state. Next slide. And then you choose the different measures that you want to compute. And after you've chosen those measures, then out pops a series of maps and graphs. So here's an example of one of the maps. where you see every segment in your state, and it's color-coded based on whether it's at some threshold, above or below some sort of a threshold. Hit next, please. And you can go in and you can further refine what is displayed. So maybe you only want to see segments that are above some threshold or below some threshold. You can click on and off different buttons that will change what is displayed on the map. There's other settings where you can click to save the data that's behind the measures to an Excel file. You can also save screenshots. And it's not there yet, but the easy button will be there as well. Hit next, please. Then you can go in and you can graph the measures as well. And what's cool is that we give you the ability to look at multiple years in a row, so long as you have access to multiple years of data. And so you can see your 2015, 2016, 2017 performance, and then you can enter in what you think your agency's target is going to be, and it will tell you if you're meeting that target, exceeding it, so on and so forth. And all of these are interactive, so you can put your mouse over different bars, and as you do that, different pop-ups come up to tell you what's happening from month to month, year to year. Next, please. And there's all sorts of other options. So here you've got the interactivity in the upper left, mousing over your Map 21 dashboard and getting that user feedback, overlaying trend lines, and then looking at multiple years. So here I've gone all the way back to the beginning of the NPMRDS data set, even version 1, to show you performance from year to year. Now it's showing you a continuum from 2012 on to today. If you go to the next slide, you can then group together your years of performance so that all of the months are next to one another, and that helps you identify if there are certain times of year, seasonality variations in your performance that may be impacting things in one way, shape, or form. Next slide. You can view lots of different measures at a time on one screen. So here we're taking a look at California's statewide measure, and then we're going in and we're also looking at a couple of MPAs. I think this is LA down in the lower left. So you could theoretically have a dashboard that has your state performance, and then every single MPO can be listed as well, and you can just scroll through and you can see everything. And that can help to facilitate dialogues that are going to happen between the MPOs and the state. Next, please. And we mentioned it already, but we are developing this easy button. It should be complete in a couple of weeks, and it allows you to immediately create all of those files and deliverables for submitting to Federal Highway Administration. We're not actually doing the submission for you. You still have to download the file that we've got for you, but it will have all the HPMS attributes and everything else that you need to submit with your reports. Next, please. So that's the basic level of tools, but then we also have these things called deep dive NPMRDS analytics. This lets you really get into the why. What's going on my system? Why is my network performing the way it is? Where are the specific problems that I should be looking at? So this gives you all sorts of congestion scans, animated maps, performance summaries, and whatnot. Next slide. So for those who decide to get the deep dive analytics, you'll see a screen similar to this. It will have a series of about 10 different tools that you can access. Next slide, please. I'll show you some quick screenshots of a few of these tools. One of them is what we call our bottleneck ranking tool. This is one of my favorites. It's used by a lot of agencies to go out and prioritize their projects. If you have a limited budget and you don't know where you need to focus your attention for improving your system, this tool is your friend. You can choose a date range and a geography. The geography can be a few corridors, it can be a few counties, zip codes, it can be your entire state. And you choose a date range, and within about 5 minutes, back comes a ranked list of the worst congested locations in your state. And it ranks them different ways. It tells you the average maximum queue length at a particular location, the average daily duration of the queue and the congestion, the total duration. If you're providing your incident data to us through RIDIS, then we can also show you where collisions are occurring and how that might be impacting. But then we've got other types of ranking criteria based on the speed differential. How far below the speed limit did the speeds drop? How long were the queues? Or how much delay was experienced by users on the interstate? So you can rank the congestion locations based on those different criteria. And then there are other charts and graphs that explain when the location is congested and how severe it is, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. Clicking a couple of extra buttons on the screen, then actually go out and compute how expensive the congestion is in a particular location. So here I looked at a particular road in the state of Maryland. On Saturday, October 29th, we had a fatal incident that incurred about $76,000 in user delay, whereas we looked the year before, it's only about $6,000 in user delay. Next slide, please. The cool thing about these tools is you can look at pretty much any date range you want, and we generate these charts that tell you by hour of day, by day of week, how many tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in user delay there is, and we break it down in terms of commercial vehicle user delay compared to passenger vehicle delay, person hours delay, vehicle hours of delay, and so on and so forth. All of that can be visualized, and you can download all the data behind it. Next slide, please. We also give agencies the ability to create animated comparative maps. So let's say you want to compare what the road conditions were like during a major collision compared to normal days at the same location. Our tools go out and we'll diagram this for you. And there's even a little play button down at the lower left-hand corner that you can click, and then that would actually animate the map and then go through by 5-minute intervals or 15-minute intervals or hour intervals. It's all interactive. You can click on the map. You can drag things around. It's pretty neat. So next slide, please. If you hit play, so here we've got an actual video that we produced using the animated trend map showing congestion during the eclipse throughout the entire United States. So you can see that dark line moving across, that's the partial eclipse starting in each area. And now the dot moving across represents when the eclipse is hitting each area. And in between the red lines going across, that's where totality is. You can see as soon as that dark dot passes, all of a sudden congestion picks up everywhere. It's everyone leaving the eclipse location and heading back home. So that's an example of using the animated trend maps for one date range, but you can do it for multiple date ranges. Next slide, please. This graphic was produced by a state that wanted to explain what travel looks like generally on the Wednesdays before Thanksgiving compared to normal Wednesdays in November. And they used this to put out a press release explaining what people might expect for Thanksgiving holiday traffic and try to encourage changing travel behavior. Next slide, please. And here we're using the same animated trend map functionality to show before and after conditions. So this is the Garden State Parkway in New Jersey. These are 7 Saturdays during the summer when people are driving to the beach for vacation. You've got the changeover at the different condominiums. This is what congestion used to look like in the middle of the day during this changeover period. Then what happens a few years ago, New Jersey went in and they removed a bunch of traffic signals along this route. If you hit the next slide, then we show you what the conditions looked like after the construction was over and all these signals had been removed. So you can kind of go back and forth and you can see how the congestion changed over time. Next slide, please. We also give agencies the ability to generate these congestion scan graphics. So what you see in the very middle of this graphic is a diagram of a road. And you can select any road that's in the system, and it'll show you all the intersections along that road. And then on the right-hand side, you have the northbound congestion during a 24-hour period. On the left hand, you've got the southbound congestion along the road during that same 24-hour period. And we're overlaying incidents that occurred, disabled vehicles, construction projects, and you can interact with this. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can switch from speed to reliability visualizations within this graphic. Next slide. And that's one time period, but you can also do congestion scans showing multiple time periods. So here again, I'm showing the Garden State Parkway, and we're showing the congestions on Saturdays during July and August of 2013. This is before that construction project to remove those traffic signals. And the next slide is then the same congestion scans, the same Saturdays in the same month, but now the signals have been removed and you're showing that change in congestion and improvement. Next slide, please. Last but not least, we also give just basic look back capabilities. So being able to choose a prior point in time and showing what the congestion looked like at 3:07 p.m. on Friday, January, whatever, 2000, whatever. And it will draw a map showing you what things looked like back then. It's useful for after action reviews and other sorts of analytics as well. All of these tools can be made available using the NPMRDS data through the deep dive analytics. Rick?
Great. Thanks, Michael. So we go back to the original, the chart where I had the building blocks. Those are two of the three tiers of analytics options. Michael will talk more about RIDIS here in a bit. As far as the pool fund, as you said, the core option is adding the PM3 analytics tools. Then you have the option for additional deep dive analytics. And via the pool fund, there are two different data options to extend the NPMRDS data set. The first is what we call backfill. Described that earlier. This is the notion of data, adding data that's consistent from the 2017 data set all the way back to the beginning of 2016. Then there's the expansion option, which adds to the entire TMC network. And the picture on the right, and this will vary in location. Actually, I'll slide here in a second with a little more detail. But it shows on the right Arkansas. The left side of the left picture is the National Highway System coverage or the NPMRDS coverage that's available, and the right side is the full network of TMC segments available in Arkansas. So the expansion option would both provide data back to 2016 and cover all the roads in blue, not just the roads in red. All the roads in red are in there, but then there's additional roads as well. And the backfill option, again, the key element there is essentially to help with target setting. And the expansion option, if you do deep dive analytics, that enriches the network that you're able to do these kinds of analysis on, all the tools that Michael described. So again, the network difference between what's defined, and there'll be some questions. I've already seen a few of the questions regarding NPMRDS itself. I think there's a few important things to point out. The network was defined by the federal government as part of the contracting process. Again, all of the rulemaking is based upon the National Highway System, So it's not that there aren't other roads and regions that can be important, but as far as the federal reporting, if it's not on a national highway system, it's not relevant. And so the coverage is defined in the contract, and that's what we call the NPMRDS network. They also added some border crossings because there's parts of the government that that's very important to as well. And then the way the data is processed is also there are some requirements placed in the contract that make the processing different than how we process our data in real time and provide kind of what has been our typical standard INRIX product. And so the network here, and on the left, this is the national network, is defined in the NPMRDS data set. On the right-hand side, this is what the network looks like for the full TMC network. It's roughly double the size. It's not quite double the number of segments. Some of the segments get larger. And I'm sure there'll be questions about segments and how TMC segments are created. And it's essentially defined by the network. There's a set of rules that the consortium that creates the TMC codes has. And so as you get in rural environments, the network, the segments tend to be longer, but they're largely defined by other cross streets of significance and how far apart those are. And so that's why we see this as we move to kind of the second, the second priority network, if you will, the part that's important enough to be monitored, but not on the NHS. The number of segments, the average segment length goes up somewhat. So it's not quite double the number of segments, but it's about double the number of miles. One way to look at the data set options as you contemplate what you might want to do here is to kind of look at a graph. The x-axis is time. The y-axis essentially is the extent of coverage. And the red box that starts in early 2017 is what is being made available right now through npmrds.ritis.org for free to states and MPOs who have data sharing agreement. The green box is the backfill option. So essentially takes that same network and provides additional data back to the beginning of 2016, same format, consistent data, and so forth. And then the expansion option adds the blue box, which essentially covers the entire TMC network all the way back to 2016 and will cover the non-NHS part or the non-NPMRDS part of the network on a go-forward basis as well. So visually, I hope that helps. Backfill is the same network looking back, essentially a year extra data. And then the expansion doubles the network, does it looking backward, and does it on an ongoing basis. So when you look at the pooled funds study, and I write here, this is our opinion. Again, every agency who's considering this has to kind of weigh all their options, their situation, what they have, what they want to accomplish. But there is the basic step, and the core thing to join the pooled fund study, task for the pooled fund study. The basic step is the core part of this. Is the MAP 21 tools only that Michael described, part one of his presentation. Then there is a logical option. If you say, I only want those analytics tools, I do not want the deep dive analytics, then the obvious option at that point is, do I add backfill, which will help me with target setting, add some additional data consistency, etc. If you decide you like the deep dive analytics, which you should like, it should be a question of money at that point. It provides you the full analytics capabilities Michael described. And then the data options are, you don't have to acquire any additional data. And so you end up leveraging the core NPMRDS data set. You have a backfill option, which again will give you kind of consistency across the NPMRDS network back from 2016. And the expanded data option, which it gives you the full data coverage to leverage give you full use of the deep dive analytics tools. And as we see them, if you're going to join the pool fund, then one of the important caveats is the pool fund is a 5-year be careful how we phrase this, but it's a 5-year commitment. We have to talk with Matt Hardy about how that gets funded and so forth, but you're basically making a commitment to join the pool fund for a 5-year period. If you are going to do the pool fund, it seems the logical options become basic tools. That gives you kind of the core capabilities to meet the federal requirements at the lowest cost. The basic tools with backfill, which gives you the ability to do improved target setting, particularly off the interstates and tracking and so on and so forth. And if you're going to do deep dive analytics, you should really consider the full expansion because it gives you the greatest benefit of the network, so the tools across a larger network. And importantly, again, I think Michael covered this, but we'll hit it again. One of the key business model things in any of these options is if a state joins or state licenses, then all the MPOs in the state get access to the same tools and data for the duration. It doesn't work the other way. If a state doesn't join, MPO then has to make decisions. But if a state does join and say, these are the tools or the options we're going with, then all the MPOs in the state get access to the same level of service. And I'll flip it back to Michael here. We have a few cost slides to kind of give you the context of the pool fund, which is the most aggressive, or the best value for money. But again, it's a multi-year commitment. So, Michael.
Thanks, Rick. So, costing. It's based pretty much on the mileage, the NHS mileage that's in your state. So we use this table to break that down. Now, as Rick just mentioned, the AASHTO Pooled Fund Study does require a 5-year commitment for the basic MAP 21 tools. So if you're Alaska, Connecticut, Delaware, it's going to cost you $115,000 for the full 5 years. That's not $115,000 per year. That's $150,000 for the entire 5-year time period. And then if you want to add on the backfill data, it's the extra $35,000. It's a one-time fee. If you want the deep dive analytics, all the congestion scans, animated maps, performance summaries, and so on and so forth, that's an additional $90K per year. And then the expansion option that gets you all the TMCs beyond the NHS is $50K one-time backfill setup, and then $25K per year moving forward to get all those additional TMCs. And the same thing goes for each state below that. Next slide, please. So as Rick mentioned, states who buy in, all the MPOs get access. But if you're in a state, if you're an MPO in a state and your state isn't buying in, you can still buy into the tools yourselves for your own MPO. And so we have a similar table here based on MPA population. We've got some representative MPOs in here, but cheaper, but not as good a value as if you're buying it for the entire state. Next slide. So again, if you want any more information on the pooled fund study, Matt Hardy with AASHTO, he's running this, and he's happy to take your call or your email, and then I can help out as well. There's my email there, pacml@umd.edu. Call me, write me anytime, and we'll get you all the information you need.
So, Michael, we'll address some questions, obviously, when we get through the next batch of slides. But is there anything else you think we've missed on the pool fund study that you want to elaborate on?
Well, the only other thing is some people think they have to join the entire pooled fund study before they can get access to this specific task, and that's not the case. You can just get access to this task at the pricing that we just showed you. You don't have to join the entire pooled fund study, all the other tasks 1, 2, and 3. That's all I can think of.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll move on to, so that's the pool fund. If you want to join through the pool fund, those are the options you have. The representative pricing, you can see. There's a question, the slides going to be made available. Yes, they'll be made available after the presentation. There's also, as Ali said, there's the recording is also going to be made available. So you'll be able to see that. We know that not necessarily everybody will be able to join the pool fund. There could be places that haven't heard of the pool fund, don't know what it is, and have issues with the type of money and how they can move it around. And so what we've done, working with the university, is create a set out. Plus there are some options that we saw that might be beneficial to kind of package is in productized packets, if you will, that weren't available through the pool fund. And so we did around the holidays was we worked very closely with Michael and his team, come up with a set of packages to offer alongside the pool fund for those that can, for whatever reason, don't join the pool fund, but still want to have access to the UMD tools and additional INRIX data. We've created these packages. Some of the key contrasts, you can do this on a year-to-year basis if you'd like. If you want to do multiple years, that's fine too. And we would lock in the pricing over the entire period of whatever term that you're looking at. But you're not required to commit 5 years. And so if you're not in a position to join the pool fund, you're worried about a 5-year commitment, you want some additional options, or you might already have some form of agreement with us or Maryland to build upon. This offers some packages, again, of similar, the same building blocks, packaged in a different way that would be put under contract through INRIX. And again, the same license model through state DOT. If a state licenses, then all the MPOs benefit. If an MPO, if the state doesn't, then MPOs license on their own. We have 3 levels of options. We call them PM3 analytics is the overarching name. The basic option comes with, this is essentially the equivalent of the core option of the pool fund with the backfill data as part of the license. And so that's the basic option through INRIX. The plus option is that same with the deep dive tools. I've got a chart here I'll show in a second, kind of build this up, make it a little more logical. And then the premium version, this is the best of the best, full functionality, including the RIDIS tools that Michael will explain here in a bit, that go beyond probe data analytics and multiple rich data sets to utilize. So in a tabular form, we've kind of stepped through this. If we look at kind of the way to compare and contrast these are that the road network that's covered, the date range of the data that's provided on that network, and then the tools that are available to leverage that data. So the baseline, this is the quote unquote free or the federally provided data. Again, it covers you can consider it the NHS network. We call it the NPMRDS network. It's got a few things additional to the NHS, but principally it's the NHS network. The version 2 format data is available from February 1, 2017 forward, and it's available through the data downloader tool that we described, npmrds.ridis.org. And that's no cost, but again, you don't have any tools. You still got to figure out how to meet your PM3 requirements. The basic service here does that, allows you to meet your PM3 requirements. It's the same road network. It adds data back to January 1st, 2016, and then adds the PM3 reporting and analysis tools, the easy button, the metric calculators, target setting, dashboard, all that stuff that Michael showed. The plus option enhances that service by adding the full probe data analytics suite, the deep dive analytics, as Michael presented it as part of the pool fund. And then when you go to the premium option, this is where we add kind of the full Monty, if you will. We expand the network to the full TMC network. We add the INRIX 1-minute archive along the exact same network. It's calculated a bit differently. It's 1 minute data. This is what current INRIX performance measures or VPP suite users see and use and leverage and have for years. We make that data available across the full network, and if you're in a state or an MPO in your region, back to 2015. And then we also offer essentially the full RDS feature set functionality. And that's to contrast with, again, the deep data analytics is not full RDS. That's focused on getting kind of full benefit of the probe data on a historical analysis basis. And Michael's we're gonna dive a little deeper in what full RDS functionality means. So I'm gonna pass it back to Michael.
Thanks, Rick. So RDS is really a data fusion, data sharing, data analytics platform. We take any data that we can possibly find that's even remotely related to the transportation system. So that's probe-based speed data, computer-aided dispatch data from law enforcement, AVL from transit, from DOT maintenance vehicles, ATMS, incident and event data, lane closure, anything you can think of, even some new connected autonomous vehicle data. And we bring that together, we standardize it, we fuse it, we redistribute it to people in real time, but we also archive all of it, and we build all sorts of tools that make it easier to measure the performance of your system and perform planning and research type studies. Next slide, please. So for those who haven't seen RDS before, it's when you log in, there's different views that you can see. You can just see incident lists. You can chat with people. You can see real-time views of weather data, weather forecasts, what the current speeds are like compared to what speeds have been like historically in the past. There's all sorts of interactive tools that are built in. Next slide, please. And lots of different data layers. When you start to zoom in to different areas of the map, oh, there you go, you can get more detailed information about where incidents are occurring. You can see live video that's coming in. We even have uplinks to some helicopter video as well. And the little orange dots that are appearing on the map near that collision that's happened to that intersection, those are responders that are pulling up to the scene of this incident. And so we can pull in the AVL data from those responders and show you where they're staging themselves. And in some of those response vehicles, there are dash cams, and we can show you the live video from those dash cams. Then if you click on the incidents, we'll show you how many lanes are blocked, and you can even get deeper than that. There's chat logs where you can talk to your colleagues that are logged in, and you can share files and information. But can you go to the next slide, please? For each of the incidents, because we're fusing so much data together, we are able to create pictures of how the incidents are being managed over time. So this is an example of one of those pictures. It's an incident timeline. We're on the left-hand side, that's the beginning of the incident, around 12:30. Then you go all the way to the right where the green line is, at 2:43, that's when the incident closed. And there's all sorts of little tick marks that pop up as you're going through the timeline, and these tick marks are telling you when responders are notified about the incident, when they're driving to the scene, when they're on the scene. Below that, you have which lanes are closed and when, and which lanes then get opened over time. Below that, there's information about which variable message signs are being displayed. There's then below that a queue graph that shows you how the queue is backing up behind the incident over time. And now we're even working to archive the real-time audio feeds from all of the police, fire, and rescue scanners throughout the country, so that you can go back and you can listen to what was being dispatched at the time. It's some really cool and innovative stuff. Next slide, please. We also pull in transit data. We can pull in any transit data that's in the GTFS real-time or static format, plus custom transit data feeds as well. And we can overlay the transit routes on top of your other routes. We can show you where the buses are, whether they're running on time, whether there's any bus bunching. We'll show you where the stops are and where there are incidents that might be affecting a particular transit line. Next slide, please. And that's an incredibly high-level overview of just a few of the data sets that are integrated into these tools. But again, we archive everything, and we have all these different analytic applications that allow you to go back and conduct studies about, where are the problem spots on my roads with respect to congestion or safety. We even archive weather data to allow you to go back and see what's going on and help you to make better informed decisions. Next slide. We have this work zone performance monitoring application that allows you to go in and look at every county in your state, where all of the work zones are, how many incidents have occurred within the work zone during the life of the work zone, what the queue length is behind the work zone right now, what's the worst queue that's ever been and what the queue is right now and whether it's getting better or worse, and even measuring the user delay cost that's occurring within the work zone. And then, next slide, you can dive down even deeper and you can click on an individual work zone and it'll show you where it is on the road, what the congestion looks like, what the user delay cost has been like for the last 7 days of the work zone, what the travel times are to get through the work zone, or the queue lengths, or the speeds. You can even look on the opposite side of the work zone to see if there's any impacts there. And for those who don't want to stare at the dashboard all day, you can go and you can register for alerts and say, tell me anytime speeds fall above or below some threshold in the work zone, or if there's a potential safety issue, disabled vehicles, collisions that are occurring, queues that are backing up, user delay cost that goes above some thresholds. All of that can be configured, and then you will receive a text message or an email when those conditions are met for your work zone. Next slide. We're also ingesting now trip data from INRIX, so we can go in and allow you to start to look at origin and destination trip patterns within your state or your region. We've got some cool analytics that allow you to specify days of week and months of the year and what types of vehicles you want to analyze and what times of day. Next slide. And then our tools go in and they develop origin destination matrices for you, so you can see how many people are going from one county to the next. Next slide, please. And other tools that allow you to select a segment on the roadway and ask the analytics to tell you, for everyone who drove along this particular road, along this particular segment, where were they going? Where did they end up? Or where did they start their trip? And how does that change if you look at different times of day and different days a week, or even seasonal variations in those trips? So all of these tools are brand new, and they're things that we're starting to offer through the RIDIS package as well. And for those who are interested in RIDIS, RIDIS is really powerful because it's integrating all these different data sets that would normally be very tough to fuse together and see in real time. And adding all of that integrated data on top of the probe data really gets you significant added value and helps you to really manage your system much better, both in real time, but then going back in time and doing all sorts of different planning applications. Rick, I'll turn it back over to you now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michael. So as I listen to Michael's conversation, I think it's important, kind of an editorial comment, that if you do the premium option, you get access to these tools. It's not magic, though, that day one, every one of these things works beautifully in your state. And so I think both excitement and overwhelming could be after you see those 10 slides. The idea is you get a license to all of these applications. Depending on the data you can make available to Michael, it can be integrated with the national data sets like NPMRDS, our INRIX 1-minute archive, his weather data, all the various things he has access to. And there could be one or more of those applications you would get started with to add additional value. But the idea is that you have access to all of these tools. And then what I think, Michael, you can chime in here, but historically, agencies will pick one or two of these, start really working it in depth, and then kind of build from there. It's an evolutionary process. The point being with the premium is you have the license to any and all of these tools, so you can do as much or as little, go as fast as you'd like with these tools. Some of them will derive value immediately just out of the national data sets. Others would require additional data or processes or what have you to take full value. Did I get anything wrong there?
No, all good.
Okay, great. So we're going to summarize here just a couple more slides, and then we'll get to the questions. We created a brochure. There's a link here to the brochure. This is for the INRIX PM3 analytics products. Again, the basic, the plus, and the premium. The back side of it shows what we've been trying to articulate in the slide deck of the various, how for incremental, each service increment, you get additional features and functionality. And so you can study the brochure in more details, go to those links. And in an attempt, I've got two more slides here that kind of summarize and reduce the confusion about what is available. So again, going back to very early on, we had a chart that said, if you're a full RIDIS customer, which Michael just described, kind of what full RIDIS customers get access to above and beyond Pro Data Analytics. If you join the AASHTO Pool Fund, or if you're going to go to INRIX here and license from us, the kind of the MAP 21 options to add. Do I do anything additional with enhanced NPMRDS data sets, whether that's backfill or expansion? If you're not a full-blown RIDIS customer, you decide to join the pool fund, at the basic level that you join, you get access to the PM3 modules, the tools to allow you to satisfy the performance reporting to the feds, and with the core data set that's available already. And then the options that are available, as described, are adding deep dive analytics, and then adding either the backfill or the expansion data, which includes the backfill, as enhanced data. And then if you are joining the pool fund and you're not a RIDIS customer, a full RIDIS user, you can come to INRIX, and at the basic level, you have access to the module that allows you to do your PM3 work. You get the core data and the backfill data. The plus module adds the deep dive analytics, and the premium module, you get the premium level, you get everything across here. So when we start doing questions, I'll come back to this chart here and just leave it up as it'll help. So finally, I think I just said all this, but to write it down, if you're an existing RIDIS customer, well, importantly, people ask, well, what do you have available? And the question almost starts with, well, what's the name of your agency, and what are you already involved in? Again, so if you're a RIDIS customer, your tools are covered. It's about whether or not you want to add additional data. If you are joining the pool fund, again, it's a 5-year commitment. At the core, you get the MAP 21 tools, and then you have some options. If you're a coalition member, but not a RIDIS customer, on my count, that's maybe half the states, you can go through the coalition or UMD to license tools and data. Or you can come to us direct to license year to year. And if you don't fall in any of those categories, you can come to us you own other MAP21 tools and you're looking for data, you can come to us. Start with me, Rick at INRIX.com, and we can navigate you to, I'll either work with you or navigate you to one of my colleagues who works with your agency. So with that, we finished the presentation part. We have time for the question and answer period here. I'm going to put my slides back to this service option. I'll leave that up. And then, Ali, I'm going to need some help here because I think, well, let me make sure, open up, okay. I'm assuming that when I put the questions here, that I can see them, but they're not on the screen for everybody. I don't want to mess up the screen here.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is going to be, as with the presentation, it'll be a tag team. So first question, can you please mention other data elements besides speed, travel time that INRIX is collecting? Well, there's a lot. Have to go to our website. We do parking data. We do all kinds of other data. But in the context of this, NPMRDS, PM3, and the like, it's really about segment level speed and travel time data. How is INRIX data validated? In the context of NPMRDS, there is a part of the university that has been validating our data, our real-time data feed for almost a decade, is doing the same for NPMRDS data. The first report, Michael, I don't know if it's out yet. It was discussed at the FHWA quarterly NPMRDS webinar, and it'll be available through the npmrds.rdis.org site soon if it isn't already. And it describes, there's a set of questions here about accuracy. So basically, without getting too deep into the weeds, we have to meet certain accuracy requirements. We've had to do it for years with our real-time data, and we do, and now it's being translated into the NPMRDS data using the same methodologies of portable Bluetooth, the Wi-Fi readers that create ground truth that test against our data. And those reports, we passed the first one, we expect to pass them, and the reports are public as made available. But importantly, again, in the context for this, the feds have determined that the NPMRDS data set is the data set. We believe in its accuracy, but just to be clear in the reporting, if you use NPMRDS, when and where it has warts, it's still okay in the context of the feds. Okay, so there's another question. Which time period is a level of travel time reliability for? Michael, I believe that's, I think you provide it annually, right? I believe that.
Well, it's whatever the rule requires. So, I can't remember specifically, but some of them use morning peak periods, afternoon peak periods, and then you choose the worst of those two for submission. So I don't remember which is which, but I know in our easy button tool, you will have to select which one you want. You'll be able to view which measures, work better for you, and then you can choose whichever one you want to submit, whether it's the morning or the afternoon peak period.
Right. And the guidance document describes in each case for each one of these measures what those periods are. And you're right, some of them are pick the worst or pick the best in a segment, then you report against that, and so forth.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's where the analytics part comes in. It will automate all of that. Presentation will be available for downloading. Yes. There's a question here. Can the NPMRDS data set be different than the INRIX data set? And the answer is yes. Probably not significantly, but I'm sure we can find it. So a couple of key points is that the NPMRDS data set has no fill-in. So if we do not see a vehicle in a five-minute window traversing across a segment, it will be left blank. There will be no, in INRIX data, we put in a historical value and we'll tell you it's historical in those cases, but for NPMRDS, it will be null if you know, a low volume road late at night, those kinds of things. You can have null periods. And then also just the way it's calculated. There are some pros and cons in both data sets. The original first output of the NPMRDS data quality actually was on an interstate a little in the north side of Pittsburgh. The real-time data was slightly more accurate. You know, we have, you know, in our you know, our Fusion engine, our black box, we have the freedom to do some things that we can't do to adhere to the FHWA requirements. But on the flip side, the FHWA data set is all its actual vehicle traversals, and so sometimes that could be a positive. Sometimes it could, you know, one data point could create a perception that may not be accurate. So on the whole, they're going to be close, and on any given data point, I'm sure you can find some differences. And again, one big difference is the INRIX archive data is 1 minute archive, and the NPMRDS data is a 5-minute archive. There are some questions, Michael, from the part about the deep dive analytics. How is the segment length determined for the bottleneck ranking tool?
So we're essentially adding up TMC segments. So if there's a TMC out on the roadway, that's a segment. Some of them are long, some are short, but as it hits a congestion threshold, maybe 40% of free flow speed over X number of minutes, then it's considered a congested segment. And then as they start to add up, segment next to segment next to segment, then the congestion grows. So today they're done in XDs. In a few months, they'll be done in XDs.
Okay, and there's a follow-up question that I'll ask you in a second, but I think what's important also with Michael and the team and the CATT Lab tools is the methodologies that are being used underneath these modules, when algorithms that are being used, they're almost always documented in methodology and available via links in the FAQs or the helps or whatever. So if you ask these questions, they can get very complicated and hard to answer in narrative. But suffice to say that one of the benefits of working with UMD is a lot of this stuff is fully transparent. So with that as context, the next question is, how is the speed differential calculated in the bottleneck ranking? It's based on relative speed between probe vehicles, or is difference between speed limit or historical speed? Again, Michael.
Yeah, so the speed differential in the bottleneck algorithm, I think that's what you're talking about, is free flow speed versus actual measured speed.
And the free flow speed
data
and the free flow speed is something we provide as not everybody has speed limits available, accurate, et cetera, and so it's been for those of us that are probe data suppliers, it's been a long-standing process of we calculate based on the vehicles themselves what we believe to be the quote-unquote free flow speed for that segment. Okay, next question. How is work zone activity integrated into NPMRDS? How is work zone information verified? Say for incidents, weather, et cetera. So I'll take this one. So it's not. The data set itself is essentially a ground truth of what's happening in a region and in a segment at any given time, whether it's under inclement weather, whether it's in the midst of an accident, whether it's in the part of a work zone. For analyzing for PM3, all that, this is where I say I don't work for the federal government, but I'll put some words in folks' mouth. All that should wash out over time. And the reality is, if it's congested, it's congested. But Michael's, the deep dive tools and NRIDIS itself allows you to get more granular if there is an incident feed, for example, available. Then congestion related to work zones, incidents, what have you, can be identified versus recurring congestion and the like. But in the context of NPMRDS, the data is the data. irrelevant to what's causing any kind of deviation from free flow or typical. Anything you want to add there, Michael?
Nope.
Okay, next question. How are some of the spatial georeference issues addressed between TMC and INRIX mismatch? So we report, all of our data gets reported on TMC segments. So there is no mismatch in that context. Now, TMCs themselves have a whole set of issues, and we don't have time in this conversation to go into it, but I like to say TMCs are the best of times, the worst of times. As Michael pointed out, TMCs are defined, the length of TMCs are defined by the network itself. And so on the Pennsylvania Turnpike or on Alligator Alley in Florida, you can have segments that are 20, 30 miles long. Hard to do detailed analysis of what's happening precisely in a 20 or 30 mile segment. But that's how TMCs are defined. And you get into urban areas and they're a mile or less space between interchanges. But the feds have defined, they've used the TMC segment definition as the backbone for NPMRDS. So that's what we report against. Anything you want to add to that, Michael?
Nope, all good.
Next question, the analytics service uses which data to compute the MAP21 values? And a follow-up question, the analytics uses the NPMRDS network or the full TMC network. So it is the NPMRDS data set against the NPMRDS network is what is needed to meet the federal performance reporting requirements. Nothing more than that. All the rest of this is to, as Michael points out, to maybe get to why some of these things are happening. Why is congestion going up? Why is it going down? Why is it increased here versus there? And then the full TMC network allows you to both monitor and answer those questions against a much broader network. So another question, is it okay to assume that the full TMC network is an expansion from the NPMRDS network? It also include non-NHS networks. Yes, that is correct. Again, it's about twice the size, so it includes the NHS network, and it'll vary by state or county, region, what have you. But nominally, on a national level, it's about twice the road network as NHS. As those of you that are deeply involved know, different states have different philosophies for what they've defined as a national highway system. So some have more as part of the NHS, some have less, and therefore the delta of what's covered could be more or less. Okay, here's a question about NPMRDS expansion. For the gentleman that asked it, you're asking about costs and this. Well, there's probably something I can answer generally, and then we'll talk to you directly. We'll address the details again specific to your agency directly. But is NPMRDS expansion, the full TMC network, the same as INRIX XD? And the answer is no. The TMC network, so this is, if you think outside of NPMRDS, when INRIX started, we reported against a TMC network. We created the XD network as another way of reporting against essentially a bigger set of roads. We added probably another 50% of the road network, and we do it more granularly with XD data. And so our XD segments are both more granular and cover more roads than TMC. But for this offer here, we're sticking to the TMC network and staying consistent again with the NPMRDS. With the network that uses TMCs. And so we offer the expansion against the TMC network, not against the XD network. If you want access to XD data, that's a different discussion, and we can have that discussion as well. And you have a set of other questions here, Tom, that we'll address via email with you. Michael, your OD stuff led to a couple of questions here. Is the OD suite online now, and what percentage of population represent any OD sample data? I can answer the second. You want to take the first?
Yeah, so the first is kind of. We are testing it out with the state of Maryland and the District of Columbia right now. So it's online to them, but nobody else. And it requires the purchase of some data for that tool to work.
Yeah, that's right. Trip data is a different data set available from INRIX. So we're certainly happy to license it, but again, it's not in the context of the PM3. It's not necessary or in that family. But if you do the RIDIS tools, that becomes will become a tool available to you. Come to us for the data, and be able to do all kinds of cool things. Let's see here. Another question. I cannot see this. There's a question that didn't finish. Sorry. Somebody asked a question for all the 4 time periods, which time period is shown on the map, and then it stops. So if you're asking that question, I want to continue asking it, or I don't think we have enough information to address. Has there been any discussion regarding...
Have them send an email to npmrds@ridis.org, and we'll figure it out.
Okay. Next question is, has there been any discussion regarding moving away from TMC to lat-long coordinates? As far as segment stuff, there's been lots of discussions around things. Again, in the world in which we live, this is our segment scheme, for better or for worse. It is the segment scheme that is part of the PM3 rule. It's a segment scheme that's part of NPMRDS. So we can have all kinds of discussion, but the reality is that we're living with TMCs in the context of the federal reporting requirements for the next 5 years. Next question is, congestion at truck freight bottlenecks addressed through the tools? Michael, you want to handle that?
Yeah, so there's 2 schools of thought there. The first school of thought is, a freight bottleneck is probably the same thing as any other bottleneck that's out there. If there's congestion, it's congestion. So that is one answer. The second answer is the NPMRDS actually has 3 data sets with it. It's got a passenger vehicle data set, a car data set, it's got a truck data set, and it's got a combined data set. So if you want to explore bottlenecks independently, you can just look at the freight side of it, the truck side of it.
Yeah, that's great. And to the question earlier about what's the difference between NPMRDS data that INRIX creates and INRIX data, that's one of them. Is that, again, in our INRIX data, 1-minute data, we take all the vehicles together and create the best answer that we believe for that segment in that time. And in NPMRDS, we have different data sets that you can hone in on trucks only. I'm sure, some elevated grades in a few places, you'll see some differences in the data that allow you, to take benefit from the truck. And even to Michael's point, there could be some analysis, the NPMRDS data can allow you to do analysis of one data set versus the other, and it could show, that there might be bottlenecks or issues or things appearing in the truck data that aren't appearing in the passenger data. And so those could be opportunities to uncover some things that heretofore haven't been uncovered. Okay, I think that's it as far as the questions. I know we're like 1 or 2 minutes over now. Michael, is there anything else for the good of the order that you'd like to add?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thanks again. Here's our contact information. We appreciate your time. We're following up with a few of you that had specific questions. Again, feel free to reach out to us. Everybody's got to figure out what to do for PM3, and we're here to help. So thank you again for your time. Ali, thank you for organizing everything here. and we look forward to working with you all in the future.
Great. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say a very special thanks to Rick and Michael for their time and expertise today, going through all of this federal reporting and the analytics tools. A reminder that you will all receive, the webinar has been recorded, and you will all receive a link to the recording from the GoToWebinar system within 24 hours, but it will also be made available on our website. In the meantime, just reach out to Rick or Michael directly, and they will walk you through everything. Thank you. That concludes our webinar today.